Nope, not mine. Tukuna te matau a mau I ke raro te moana. Ko te nā te hika te raro ko te matahorua. Mau ti, mau. Ua ngā uti o te matahorua he ka ti he kua ngā hue te tumu o te moana ko te matahorua. Ai, tukuna te matau a mau I ki raro te moana. Ko te nā te hika te raro ko te matahorua. Mau ti, mau. Ua ngā huti o te matahorua he ka ti he kua ngā hue te tumu o te moana ko te matahorua. Hai. Kia ora koutou paurua e tai putuputu maira ki tō tātou putuputuanga I te awatea nei. My name is Dickie Humphreys. My bones come from the island of Mitiaro. My genealogy is deeply embedded in the Eastern Pacific. And I share this pe'e or chant with you this afternoon as a way of creating the connection or making known or bringing to the surface the connection between this land that we are on now, Te Ka Maui, and ngā mana whenua o te whenua nei, and our deep connections into Te Moana Nui a Kiwa. Our panel this afternoon will take us deep into the Pacific, back to Te Ka Maui, and then out again into the Pacific. That chant comes from the Northern Cook Islands, and it tells a story, or is part of a longer chant that tells the story of Maui being told, cast your hook into the sea, for there below is a fish called te matahoru. Further along in the chant, if I had a half an hour more, it tells how that fish was pulled from the sea floor and eventually became the islands of Manihiki and Rakahanga in the Northern Cook Islands. So I share that story because there's another story that we're very familiar with, which is around Maui doing the same for this fish that we are on. And so the connection between the fish that we are on now, Te Ka Maui, here in Aotearoa, and the many histories, societies, cultures, stories of the Pacific, of Te Moana Nui a Kiwa, are intricately linked through our genealogies and our knowledges. In the chant, the word for hook is matau. And in my language, matau also means ability or skill set. In Te Reo Māori or Aotearoa, it's the root word to matauranga, knowledge. I learned this morning that in Ngangana Samoa, it means knowledge gained through observation. So we're going to hear from our panelists later, very shortly, about knowledge, about skill set, about observation, and how these things, through the institutions of libraries, contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals here in Te Moana Nui a Kiwa. It's not a story that sits in isolation. That chant shows us that it's something that is intergenerational, that it is deeply connected. The hook was made from Maui's grandmother's jaw, another symbol that tells us that knowledge, that observational learning, that ability and skill set is ancestral in its nature and in its transmission. And so we are here in 2022, going 3, 4, 5, with institutions throughout the Pacific, throughout Te Moana Nui a Kiwa, who maintain that knowledge transmission culture that is endemic to the places that we come from. So, before I introduce our panelists for this afternoon, I will first provide some minutes to Winston Roberts, who is the chair of the Regional Asia-Oceania Committee for the International Federation of Library Associations and their institutions.
Thank you, Dickie. I'm not officially a speaker on this panel, but I brought the panel together, invited the panel, had the idea for the session, so I am, to some extent, giving you a word from the sponsors. That is to say, IFLA, the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions. The reason for holding this panel is that I'm the chair of the Regional Division Committee of IFLA, that has 6 regions around the world. And as you can see on the slide, we represent the interests of the whole profession globally, and we advocate for library services. And it's particularly important to stress that we are non-governmental. We're an international NGO, not-for-profit, and we have a large number of technical committees. We're a standard-setting organisation as well as an advocacy body, and we represent the Pacific as well as having regional committees in Latin America, Africa, Middle East, and even North America and Europe. But this is our committee for Asia Pacific, or as we tend to call it, Oceania, but I don't mind what you call it. And we have, I'm the chair of a committee of 20 people based in our region, scattered around the region. And I invited one of our committee members is the gentleman from Samoa who's going to speak in a moment. I also invited a colleague from Fiji who unfortunately had to cancel at the last minute, which is a great shame because she was going to talk on other things which we carefully designed into the program, but her abstract is in the abstract book. The abstracts of all our speakers are in the abstract book, so have a look at those and that might inspire some questions. But I also want to just point out here on this slide that we have our headquarters, the red dot, is based in The Hague. That's a very strategic location because those guys up there can advocate to UNESCO in Paris. They can go to Geneva to talk to the UN bodies there about internet governance, about copyright issues at WIPO and things like that. Very good to have head office so close to the UN agencies. We also have regional offices in one at the National Library of Singapore. We have one in Brazil. We have one in South Africa, in Pretoria. And basically, we do projects and we try to promote the interests of libraries in this region. So I'm hoping that my colleagues here will give you some new insights onto what libraries do for development, how libraries can work with your professional NGOs, your associations in your countries in the region to talk to your decision makers and government agencies. And well, it's not just fundraising, it's fundraising and as a means to an end, and the end is preservation of human knowledge in the region, particularly because this region is subject to natural disasters, climate change and other threats, and we are trying to promote and develop, protect the knowledge of the cultures of this region together with all the partners that we work with. So I'll stop there, enough said from me, and over to Dickie. Thank you.
Tēnei te mihi ki a koe, Winston, no te rā kōrero. I'm going to introduce, I'm just going to very quickly introduce our speakers and then we'll roll into it. A little bit more about me, I'll only take 10 seconds more. So I have a work history in international development. I worked in international development for a few years, living in country and working in Malaysia and Borneo, and prior to that in learning and development for the Oxfam International Youth Partnerships, and now I am the Head of Community Impact at Auckland Council. So it's a nice kind of marriage and woven fibre this afternoon that we will hear. Winston has referred to Tulia Vakalutu-Kali, who was unable to travel from Fiji today, but her abstract gives a really great scene setting for what we're about to hear. So give me the liberty, I'm going to read what she has written, and this will draw out some key themes that our speakers will speak to today. So this from Tulia. Libraries are learning spaces that connect us with the digital and physical world. They provide relevant and quality information that transform lives and communities. Libraries nurture literacy, libraries inform, libraries empower. In Fiji, most of the libraries are geographically located in the rural and maritime zones. The remote nature of these places presents unique infrastructural challenges. Internet connectivity and current and relevant education information materials remain inaccessible to most of these communities. As a result, the people who face the most adverse effects of climate change are the least equipped with knowledge and adaptive practices to deal with the devastating impact on their communities. I'll just let that one settle for a bit. To ensure that people have access to significant quality information to sustain and develop their lives, the Department of Library Services of Fiji, and you'll hear other examples from the Pacific this afternoon, have been taking quality resources to schools, communities, and to the interior and remote islands. Staff facilitate access to relevant information to nurture literacy, inform community members, and empower them to become lifelong learners, SDG Pillar 4, education. In addition, they provide and disseminate information that support the many pillars to eradicate poverty, improve the life chances of their communities, improve health, promote equal rights and justice, and give their communities the tools to develop democracy and reduce corruption. Libraries have been playing active roles, whether directly or indirectly, in supporting the components of the Sustainable Development Goals. So Tulia, while she can't be here with us today, leaves us with some pertinent themes that we will hear more of in a minute. So, in the order in which you will hear our speakers, we have Avalongo Tongi Tanupopo from the National University of Samoa. There you go. We have then followed Richie Misilei from Connected Communities Auckland Council. There we go. Thank you, Richie. And then rounding out the panel, we have Whailangi Alakalaine Kirisome from the Ministry of Education, Sports and Culture of Samoa, and is the manager of Samoa Public Library Services. So with that, we will first hear from Avalongo. How can integrated planning for library services aid development? Avalongo will highlight critical success factors and make recommendations based on the unique features of libraries in small islands that contribute to the SDGs. Please, big pati pati mai for Avalongo.
Whakawhitai lava, Dickie. Yeah, te momon whaatalo whātu. I bring you warm tropical greetings from our island of Samoa and the National University of Samoa, as well as our many library colleagues who couldn't be here with us, especially from our Pacific Library Network all over in our South Pacific region. I know that we are speaking and voicing their general mutual feelings and aspiration for this conference on development. But I would like to begin by saying thank you to our National Library of New Zealand, as well as to our Library and Information Association of New Zealand for their sponsorship in bringing us across from Samoa for this very important conference. It is the first time we've advocated and speak in the Development Net Network Conference. So we're very happy to be here. My talk to you this afternoon is based on planning and what we have been doing in Samoa. So it's mostly based on my experience, my working experience in running the Library Association in the last 20 years. And for that, integrated planning and plans, library plans are very important in the development of libraries in any region. So what I meant by planning is integrated in those concepts. It's about collaboration with other libraries, schools, university faculties, and our communities. And it's about networking with local and overseas library stakeholders, including the university libraries of Auckland and Victoria and Otago, who are some of our partners with the National University of Samoa. It's about sharing of knowledge, information, and experiences across, the divide in our Pacific Library Network. And it's also about best practice and adopting those experiences from our other colleagues in the Pacific. It's also about, adopting corporate and strategic plans and trying to develop our libraries in Samoa. And it's very important that, we increase awareness and keep advocating and asking for grants from IFLA to carry out training and workshops in our small islands. A brief history of our libraries in Samoa is that we started back in the 1959 when the first public library was set up based on the collection, private collections of some expatriate educators and volunteers in Samoa. So they started the library collections, and that formed the origins of the Nelson Memorial Public Library in the 1960s. In 1970s, there were other important libraries, such as the University of South Pacific School of Agriculture Library, set up at Alafua. And then the Parliamentary Library or Legislative Library was also developed. Following on in the 80s, there were the development of school and college libraries, such as the main colleges, Samoa College, Avele, the Pesenga, and of course a special library, the Salafai Community Library. That was a very important project at Whangamalo in Savaii. And in the 90s, there was the development of special libraries in various ministries and the UN agencies such as the UNDP, UNESCO, the FAO, and so forth. In the 90s, we also see the importance of the University of South Pacific in our region in terms of leading developments in library services, especially with the Ministry of Education, in development of school libraries, and in terms of circulating and depositing important Pacific publications in various national and educational institutions, including public libraries. So that was an important early development of libraries. The National Library of New Zealand also had projects with the public library in Samoa, as well as helping out with a school mobile library service. However, over the years, this development were discontinued with time and change of management, and such was the development over that era. By 2000, we started subscribing to the Te Puna online database network of the National Library of New Zealand, and this was very important for the development of our university library. The NUS, or the National University of Samoa Learning Resource Center, emerged to take on leadership of the Library Association of Samoa. And we started with applying for funding from IFLA to develop workshops for our librarians in Samoa. Some of the important regional organizations that could have done a bit more for libraries were the South Pacific Commission, or Secretariat of Pacific Communities, and the Pacific Forum Secretariat, who were based in Fiji and in New Caledonia. However, there was limited support for libraries from those organizations. For instance, there was an absence of a regional and policy framework for libraries in the region. And this meant that there was no legislative or statutory plans to set up national laws for library in our Pacific countries. And so it was upon each island or each state to develop and push their own development. We were only guided in Samoa by the Education Sector Act, Education Act, in terms of trying to formulate our own library framework. But we rely heavily on Samoan, on the experiences of our Pacific libraries, especially the University of South Pacific, to assist us with policy development. By 2000, that was the era of the internet in the islands, in the Pacific, and there was also the growth of school libraries. The ministry has realized the importance of libraries in each school, and so it was heavily dependent on the school board as well as the ministry to assist in the development of libraries. Private schools such as the Robert Louis Stevenson School, Samoa Primary, and Fatuatua all had access to more budget and funding and had to set up their own libraries. So there was also the introduction of library automation, as well as the importance of databases for research at university level, at academic libraries. The Education Department also had a one laptop project with the Computer Services Limited, of which introduced the internet to some of our community libraries and school libraries. Another important setup was the MCIT, establishing legislative and statutory for governance of information community technology. And in that regard, audiovisual resources as well as have taken on more value, and we're borrowing heavily by people. Here is our Library Association of Samoa. That's our vision. It's about weaving knowledge and information, and we advocate for improved library development and assist with library services and training. That's our website. If my colleague there can click our link there and demonstrate the work that we do and our mission and purpose. That was uploaded last week, our workshop photo from September. That was the most recent workshop we've had. with the Ministry of Education. Can you take us down to the photo archives? Yeah, well. That's it, a photo gallery. Yeah, there's some more photos of some of our staff members and some of the work that we do, and some book launching events. Yeah, those are some snapshots of our library work in Samoa. Thank you. And we try very much to mobilize support for our librarians, especially the school libraries, and advocate for better library services and information in Samoa. And we also represent our libraries in the region. In 2005, we proposed to IFLA for funding, and we got funding for our library workshops in Samoa. So we try and bring together librarians from all over the country, from Savaii, and build capacity and knowledge, and assist them with their school libraries. We also collaborate a lot with the University of South Pacific at Alafua and the Ministry of Education in terms of providing advice in various projects. And we started a big project back in 2007 on the School Library Management Certificate that bridged a very important gap in the labor force. And we got funding from Pride and the USB to roll out that training. It was a 4-month training, and we had several cohorts over the years, starting in 2007, and the last one was 2017. So, yeah, that was an important development, and it provided employment opportunities for school leavers and other people who are interested in libraries and reading. And through that project, we were able to meet a very important need and concern by our government, the ministry, and we were able to put school librarians back into the zoo education. Because before there were no school librarians in primary schools, but there were only a few in the colleges. And this was a big help and assistance to our principal and teachers, as these school library assistants were able to bring back and revive book reading, literacy week and library week, as well as the reading periods in classes. And among other things, we mobilize our 3 monthly meetings and discuss issues and work on library awareness. And how we in Samoa try to assist in advancing the Sustainable Development Goals. Well, school libraries and any other libraries provide reading material, access to reading material. We assist with literacy programs and development of lifelong learning. We are a physical storehouse of knowledge and heritage and cultural spaces, learning spaces. We also provide computer access to ICT. We interloan books from overseas, and we provide a very important source of information for literature review and research for university students. NUS Library or Learning Resource Center play a very key role in our sector in terms of advocacy and research. We are dependent upon to promote research at the university as well as in Samoa, and help set up digital repository for archiving open research and data. We build new infrastructure and make available ICTs to publish online. We create open access policies to mandate available results of research, and regional collaboration with the Pacific Library Network and IFLA. We keep trying every year to convince management about the value of open access and Creative Commons licenses for publications, and work with other universities and to develop open access initiatives. The Samoa Knowledge Society Initiative project in the last 2 or 3 years, as Professor Yona Chan Mao talked about in her presentation yesterday, was a very important development in terms of government, and NUS is the key implementing partner in this project. And we were severely affected by the pandemic. And we're very much busy with the Samoa Digital Library implementation. And we still have teething problems due to lack of trained staff. The aims of our Samoa Knowledge Initiative is to try and meet some of the key sustainable development goals, of which we believe we have met: quality education, access to information, mitigating gender inequalities and poverty of information to the rural sectors and schools. So through this project, we're able to develop a beautiful platform of database, SADIO, as well as the provision of information, institutional, full text information on Samoa and from the region. We contribute to our government's vision to become a knowledge hub on the Pacific and in terms of Samoa collections. And we fulfill that key outcome 11 in our strategy for development, SDS, to achieve universal access to reliable and affordable ICT services and provide an enabling environment for all Samoans to maintain the right of access to information. That access to information is a key. It's a human right, and it has been spoken about by various stakeholders, and because it empowers people, our constituents, our audience, and our students, to improve their capacity to make informed decisions. It allows students to carry out research and staff for postgraduate research. It enables business people to make investment decisions based on data, as well as medical doctors. We have a school and faculty of health science to perform critical operations. And the list of benefits continues. So we take for granted that we are not meeting the SDG, but we are. And we need to raise this flag that we are in the region, in libraries, are positive about our development. And in conclusion, a way forward, we are continuing with our SKSI SADIO project. And if you don't mind, my friend Mike at the back, if you can just click on that link to show our audience, our database there. And so there are 3 components of our Knowledge Society initiative, and they are as listed there. And it's a lot of work for our university and partners to carry this out. But we're very thankful, and I greatly acknowledge our professor, Dr. Yona Chan Mao, who has been a leading partner together with that lady there from the UN coordinator, resident coordinator in Samoa, in advancing this important project and library development for our country. And that is our NUS website, where we also have our library and lots more databases there and important links to information. So I thank God that our ICT director was here presenting with our professor and highlighting some of this important work that the university has done. And there we are. I thank you very much for your participation and IFLA. We've acknowledged IFLA for their continuing support, and we will continue to subscribe and pay our subscription to become a member so that we can get funding. And we ask our stakeholders from National Library New Zealand and Liansa to assist us, as well as the VSA, Volunteer Services Abroad, to send us a library assistant to assist with our digitization. Thank you for my time, and thank you very much for your participation this afternoon.
Now, don't run away too fast. I have been thinking of one question. I have one question. And if there are any percolating, then please feel free to put up your hand as well. I know what always happens is that someone will hear something and go, oh, I must remember to ask that at the end. And then you stop listening to everything else in between. So this is just a little chance to get that question off your chest if you happen to have one there. My question is, you know, you paint very well the journey from ad hoc, sporadic, one-off pieces of development in the library's journey in Samoa from 1950s. Some things started, some things didn't, and then eventually there was an integrated approach to planning, to infrastructure, to workforce development, to income streams, and that you made a very good connection between once having built up a sizable infrastructure through great planning, the effects are starting to happen in community from an SDG point of view. What, in your opinion, after all that time and that shift from sporadic to integrated planning, has been, what have you seen in the community that has made the difference here of libraries coming together in a systematic way?
Thank you. We still have yet to see some major outcomes of it, but the best outcome is that we see, you know, in terms of the success rate of our students, they are, you know, utilizing library you know, for their research, and where there's, you know, a lot more people going to our public library and borrowing books and doing, you know, reading programs with our school librarians. So there's a lot more to be observed, and we see that, you know, we've put school librarians out in the schools, and we're still planning on increasing the labor capacity there for well-trained librarians to, you know, to develop reading, because the reading is still very important, and we think that there's still a place for libraries in our community. Yeah, I hope I have tried to answer your question.
Very, very well, very nicely. Are there any burning questions right now before we move on?
One question online.
Yes, one question online.
Yeah. So the question is, how does the Library Association support and fit into the role of media nationally and internationally, ensuring the accountability, transparent, and free speech? Perhaps also the countries that may not have media freedom.
I didn't get the first
The first one is, how does the Library Association support and fit into the role of media, nationally and internationally?
I see. Oh, I think the libraries are very liberated people who are in the forefront of pushing the use of social media. We've got a Facebook as well as a website, and that's how we encourage librarians to utilize Facebook for communication, to share information, as well as mobilize our librarians in the rural areas to come forward to our peer for meetings. And yes, we're very encouraging of students to use the media properly. And we also invite the media into our meetings to do press releases. Have I answered the question properly?
Any other questions while we're here? No? All right. Thank you for Te Lava. We'll come get you back soon at the end for Talanoa.
No worries. Thank you.
Oops. All right, so thank you very much. Our next speaker is Richie Misile from Connected Communities, Auckland Council. How can libraries shape community environments that enable communities to thrive and SDGs to be realized? Richie will share a local Aotearoa perspective of joined-up approaches leveraged for community impact. Hey. Okay.
Cool. Talofa lava, malo lei, kia orana, ni sambula manaka whakalawhalai atu taloha ni, and halo es oketa, and tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Richard Misile. People call me Richie or Rich. The last has nothing to do with my bank balance, but I'm married to a beautiful woman by the name of Jolene. I'm father to a beautiful girl named Grace. I'm son of two amazing immigrants who came from Samoa, Misile and Vaivasa Misile, and I'm brother and uncle to my beautiful Ainga. When I was told that I was going to be presenting, and I knew I had two Samoan colleagues come from Samoa, and Winston said something along the lines of, oh, the Samoans are presenting. And I was figuring, oh, I don't, because these two are from Samoa. I was born here in New Zealand. So if I think about us being an alcoholic drink, these guys are the alcohol, I'm the ice, because I'm watering it down. But at the same time, I keep it cool. So I'm doing this prezzo, and I'm wearing 3 hats, as you can see on my screen there. There's the IFLA that Winston was talking about, Lianza, which is our national body, and then there's Auckland Council. So one sponsored us, one organized all the travel and the paying of everything, and then the other has allowed me to be here without using my annual leave. Okay, so just please be aware that, the overall theme is about libraries and SDGs, but I'm gonna be looking at something a little bit more specific. But I do want you to be aware that I'm not an academic, because I've been noticing that this conference is very academic. My presentation is a lot more grassroots and practice-based. So as you see here, the following is some screenshots of some mahi that the libraries do to contribute to the achieving of the SDGs. So this comes from the IFLA guide on how library systems around the world can storytell, or how they share the work of the mahi they're doing towards the SDGs. I'm not going to go through all of them, and you're probably looking at the screen and thinking, please, Rich, don't go through those. So I'm just going to touch on 2 of them. The first example is SDG number 1, that goal, which is no poverty in all forms. Now, you might be wondering, how does an institution which is focused on literacy contribute to this goal? Well, target 1.4.1, which is an indicator. The indicator is the proportion of the population living in households with access to basic services. And it's easy for us to look at this world and see that a basic service for our people today is access to the internet. And so libraries have always been a non-profit provider of this service, and I'd say for at least 2 decades now. And in poorer communities where access to the internet might be missing from the home, the libraries have always provided this. And to move with the times, some public library systems in New Zealand have now partnered with Spark Foundation to provide internet access to households without a broadband connection. This program is called Skinny Jump. So, and the second example is about SDG 4, which looks at quality education. The target indicator there is target 4.1, which says by 2030, ensure that all girls and boys complete free, equitable, and quality primary and secondary education leading to relevant and effective learning outcomes. We have a National Library of New Zealand, and they have within them a unit called Services to School, which I found out yesterday is the biggest service in National Library, and National Libraries within the DIA. And so the Services to School, this is from their website, they support educators by providing professional learning advice and quality resources to inspire and inform student learning, foster their love of reading, and develop their knowledge of culture and heritage. So they have within them 3 teams. One is a digital team, and they provide the online resources for these schools. When I say schools, it's teachers, students, and school librarians. They have a reading team, so they're providing books to schools that are relevant to their syllabus and curriculum. And then school facilitators, who are the national team, who essentially are the face of this mahi, and they provide the face-to-face professional development. I'm not going to stay on this slide any longer, like I said, but as I go through this presentation, you'll be able to view some of the SDGs that libraries contribute. So the context of my presentation today came about because of a restructure program that happened within Auckland Council last year. So 2 departments were being merged together, the Libraries and Information and ACE. And what was being formed was a new department called Connected Communities, of which I'm a part of now, which my manager here, Kim, is a part of, and Dickie is a part of. So this really forced a new way of working for all of us. So we had to undertake learning a new system. I came from the library side, and I've always been a campaigner of the value of libraries in society. So when this restructure occurred, I was a little bit naive, and I thought, look, it's going to bring 2 departments together, but I'm still going to keep libraries doing what they do, and the other department can just be the add-on. Wrong. How wrong I was. So my particular theme today is around the power of libraries partnering with others to achieve SDGs. So just quickly, I just want to quickly touch and define those 2 those 2 departments that were merged. So the single one, so the Libraries and Information Department has 56 sites, ranging all the way from north in Welsford right down to the south in Waiuku. It's the largest public library system in Australasia. In council at the time, it was the largest department in terms of staffing, and it was well respected amongst elected members. And because of time, I had a story around that, but all I'll say is other department representatives used to tease us and say, you guys are the golden child of council. ACE, that's all in the name, Arts, Community and Events. So the arts obviously looks at public artworks, art facilities, art brokers, etc. The community part looks at community development, community empowerment. So this is just giving money to community organizations so they can achieve local board outcomes. And there's the provision of community halls, community centers, and community facilities. And then the events part, just think about all the big events that we have out there, like the Santa parades, the Anzac, celebrating Anzac, Matariki, Waitangi, etc. But one thing to note is that the ACE, or the E part, the events, they didn't merge in, they got put into another department. So it was just the A and the C that moved together with libraries. One thing to note, and I want you to hold on to this point I'm going to say, is when we compare the 2 departments, libraries was seen as having a large staff budget, but a very small programming budget. But ACE were different. They had a small staffing budget, but their programming budget was far bigger. So in my old role, I used to manage these 4 libraries as well as another 4 libraries in another local board. So I used to look after the Mangere Otahu local board, and the Otara Papatoe local board. So there were 8 libraries within those 2 board areas. In my new role, I am only looking after one of those boards, which is the Otara Papatoe area, and I have these 4 libraries. I've managed to keep these 4 libraries. But in my new role, I've had to undertake these 3 new sites. There's a community centre there called Te Poke o Otara, art gallery called Fresh Gallery, and a music facility called Otara Music and Arts Facility, which we call OMAC for short. So since the restructure, I've really had to learn how they operate. Because, I know how libraries operate. I had to figure out how these guys operate. As I said, I naively assumed that libraries can just keep going the way they can go, and these 3 can just keep doing what they do. And I think I did that because I was really protective of libraries and the way they work. Because for me, libraries is community focused, and we're in that fight for literacy. But then something happened. As I started working with these guys, I started to discover that actually the immense value in them is that they're heavily community focused too, as well. And they might not be lifting up literacy in the definition of the word that we know, but they were lifting up community development. They were lifting up community empowerment and other forms of literacy like the arts and music, etc. So the way of working in this new department was focused on working together as a local board, which meant that I couldn't look at it like just the 4 libraries and the 3 ACE sites. I had to look at it like there were 7 connected communities sites, and we needed to unlock the potential of this new collaboration. So I'm going to show you 4 examples of that collaboration where libraries begins to partner with other organizations, and in this case, it's with other teams within Connected Communities. So this is my board here, and this is a project that we call the walking tour and the bus tours. The purpose of these tours was to show locals, who were mostly seniors, the types of council services that were available to them in the local board area. For the walking tour, we had them walking in what we call the Otara Town Centre precinct. If you've heard of the Otara flea markets, that's the area there. And that houses 5 council services: a community centre, a pool and leisure centre, a library, a music facility, and an arts facility. For the bus tour, we were able to take some of our locals on a bus tour to see all 4 libraries, as well as the research centre that sits within the local board. So both tours were enjoyed by the attendees, and the learning that you see on the faces of the attendees was amazing, because they discovered that there was a service that was available to them. The next slide is a comparison slide. And so what I want to do here, the intention for me is not to show not to downplay libraries acting independently. It's really just to show the power of connected communities, of libraries partnering with other groups. So as you can see on the left there, the libraries on its own didn't have a program for the walking and bus tours, but under connected communities, now funding comes in, and it really helps out to really push that type of event. And the SDGs that are realized here are number 4, number 11, and number 17. Now we move out west, and they have a program called the Matariki Festival 2022. And this was a huge collaboration. They called a working group called the West Connect. So it was libraries, community centers, community hubs, and they all worked together to create this massive event. And so some of the parts of the event was there was huge Matariki celebration with 1,000 people going through Avondale Library. There was workshops around bone carving, rongoa, native plants, and there was a hikoi led by Whaia Donna Kirridge over the area of Te Aratu Peninsula. And I know I'm short on time, so I'm just going to skip quickly. So this is another comparison slide. Remember, I'm not downplaying libraries on their own, but I just wanted to show the power of libraries connecting with other organizations. And the SDGs realized here, quality number 4, number 8, number 10, and number 11. Now we move all the way to Papakura, our local board, and this is another project that was a realization of bringing libraries and arts facilities and other groups together. And so this is the comparison table. So libraries, they worked with arts, but was minimal. And the experience of AR technology was limited, but under connected communities, this flourished. There was more exposure to the technology. There was more exposure for the artists, and library users were now exposed to the arts. And lastly, the Waitemata local board, that's the current local board that we're in now, and we have the Pānau Festival of Roses. And this is a big kind of festival that happens in Pānau when the roses start to come out. And the libraries used to just have a space there every year, and this is what they used to provide, but under connected communities, them now partnering with Studio One, Toitu, and other organizations, they were able to provide far more. And the SDGs realized here, and number 2, number 12, and number 17. So this slide here is almost essentially the same as the others, but it's probably on a smaller scale. And this is probably extends outside of my connected communities framework. So these are just some library systems. They have some issues that they need to deal with, but then it deals with it satisfies a SDG. So the first one, as you see there, Waimahia Library, used to have issues with youth acting out. So the youth would come after school, they'd be acting up, and then the library staff asked them, why are you guys reacting like this? And they informed them it was because we're hungry. We haven't had enough to eat. And so the library obviously can't provide food. We don't have the funding for it, so they went and asked the business association, they went and asked other organizations, local police, and now there's a program there where the children are fed. And so the SDG that's realized there is number 2, zero hunger, as well as SDG number 10. Because of time, I'll skip right to the bottom. So the one that really gets me is that bottom one, with Central Library. So they have a program where they're dealing with the homeless. So they used to, if you know our central library, a lot of homeless people were hanging around there. So what they did was they pulled them in and said, what is it that you need from the library? Rather than push them away and reject them. And so they had this hui where they were able to learn. And my colleague, Rachel Rivera, said she spoke to a guy named Reg. And he said, this is what he said: sometimes I just have this feeling of despair. And so often I think the reason why libraries is there and the reason why it needs to power and partner with other organizations is because there's people in the community who are feeling like this, who are feeling this feeling of despair, they're feeling hopeless. And so you would hope that this power that libraries has and that libraries can have with other organizations to really help deal with those kind of feelings. So that is pretty much me. Whawhatai lava, ma ia manuia. Thank you.
I'll just come use this mic. I have a question. So you paint a really great picture of the potential for libraries with the right partnerships and the right approaches to be community anchors, safe spaces, neutral spaces where new realities can be brought forth. Part of that is the mindset game, no? And you know, some people might have perspectives of libraries that they should do library stuff, and you know, so this is a new conversation to bring libraries into a DevNet type conference, right? So there might be two worlds say, yeah, you do great jobs there, you could do great jobs there, but we don't have to do them together. What has the mindset journey been like for community, for staff, to be able to create the greater thing that is more than the separate thing? Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Dickie. That's a good question. I think the mindset has happened because of what has occurred in the community. And so we've seen all these issues come up, and I feel like the SDGs have popped up because of a result of what's happened in society. And so the mindset has been, oh yes, we operate in books, but actually we have a space. And one side to it is people aren't coming in to read books because literacy isn't as important. But we all know that's important. Literacy is so vital that we still need to push that. But we also have the space, and this space does nothing at this time. Let's bring in another part of society to deal with some of these issues. So my example of Waimahia Library, they remain their core, which is literacy, but they see this other need, and it'll be in the mindset is, oh, we can satisfy that need because we've got the space, we got people around, and we can pull them together. So it's that whole, we've got the power, we've got the potential, we should just do it.
Any questions, one or two questions? We are running short on time, but questions are the good bit.
You know,
all good. Okay. Go ahead.
Just ask a quick follow-up question about that example that you shared of the kids acting up in the library and the libraries taking steps to find a way to provide food.
Yeah.
Has there been any knock-on effect of that that's related to the other use of the library? I mean, I'm just wondering if by having the kids still be there but in a more positive way, has there been any knock-on effect in the kids interacting with the library in other ways?
Yeah,
or
yeah.
maybe reading more? Or?
Yeah, so the troubled behavior has gone and it's decreased. Actually, if I move to the last example with the Streeties, with the Auckland Central Library, so they were given this opportunity to now let the library be theirs, and all the trouble that used to happen that the Streeties used to bring has gone because they've taken ownership of that space. And the same with the youth, and I used to work in the youth library as well. As soon as they own the space and they feel like, oh, I can trust this librarian because they've got my well-being at mind, then I'm going to look after it. And so we used to find that some of our youth who used to come in the library would defend it against outside people. Used to try come in and say, oh, let's smash this place. But then they'll say, no, this is our space. Don't touch it. So there's definitely knock-on effects. It's easier to then push literacy because that's the main game. Hey, we want our kids to read. So once they're in their position of trust, once they feel like they can come to you, then it's like, okay, we trust you. Did you know you should read? do this, read this book. I bet you'll like this book. So that's been the knock-on effect. Cool. Hopefully answered. Thank you. Thanks for the question.
Nice, thank you, Richie. I think we can give another round of applause for Richie Mr. Lane. So rounding out our panel this afternoon, as she finds her way to the front, is Whailangi Alakalaine Krisome from the Ministry of Education, Sports and Culture Samoa, Manager of Samoa Public Library Services. How do equitable and inclusive education services grow active citizenship and engagement in SDG priorities? I don't know, that's just something I was thinking about. Maybe we'll have something about that. Whailangi will share a strategic perspective from the Samoa Public Library Service perspective.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Talo Falava, and greetings from the beautiful island of Samoa. This afternoon, I am privileged to present the topic, the community impacts of public libraries in Samoa. Given I work for the Ministry of Education and managing the public library, the only public library in Samoa, not only is a blessing, but there are a lot of challenges, not only for me, for the staff, and for the community as a whole. First of all, let me share with you a little bit of history of public library services in Samoa. I believe Avalongo has touched on this part on his presentation. The public library, it was established in 1959, but officially opened in 1960. The library used to be called the Nelson Memorial Public Library. It was named after the prominent businessman and historical figure in the history of Samoa, Olaf Frederick Nelson. I believe the Nelson family donated the land where the public library still stands today, with some construction cost as well as the government of Samoa. The public library is now under the government through the Ministry of Education, Sports and Culture. The main library is in the capital, Apia, with its only branch in the big island of Savai. The roles of public libraries in achieving sustainable development goals. For a public library, Sustainable Development Goal number 4 is where we find ourselves in. However, we do support all the other 17 SDGs. For SDG number 1, I will use this as an example. For SDG number 1, to end poverty in all its forms everywhere, libraries support public access to information and resources that give people opportunities to improve their livelihoods. Sustainable Development Goal number 4 is about education and is among the 17 Sustainable Development Goals established by the UN in 2015. And let me share with you our Education Ministry's mission statement that coincides well with the SDGs. Our mission statement states that it ensures that inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. Our education sector goals, there are 5 goals, and one of it is enhancing quality education at all levels. Quality education. I will elaborate more on quality education. Quality education is one that provides all learners with capabilities they require to become economically productive, develop sustainable livelihoods, contribute to peaceful and democratic societies, and enhance individual well-being. So how do libraries and librarians contribute with improving this goal, quality education? The librarian as an educator and a learner, the librarian as a researcher, as an initiator. Speaking from a local perspective on some of the ways that library services in Samoa is supporting the implementation of sustainable development goals. Libraries are important partners in child development. For example, literacy programs and reading, tutorials, free internet access, team programs. This is how we support our fight against climate change. Yeah, when we celebrate and make our programs that gears toward some of the key areas like Earth Day, stop smoking, breastfeeding awareness for health, when we celebrate Samoan culture and traditions, or even book characters. One of the other role that we play is our preservation and archival of historical events in book form. We find this especially in our Pacific collection and historical books about Samoa and the Pacific. For example, books about the Mau movements, the Lapita pottery, the history of tattoo, the history of church denominations. We have a big collection of newspaper of the two newspapers in Samoa, the Savali and the Samoa Observer. This is very popular with people looking for information on the events of the past or even the court proceedings. Libraries, for us, it provides a haven for emotional impact. It's a quiet place to contemplate, to meditate, to read quietly, to soothe spirit, to take time for themselves, equitable access to information that supports social, political, and economic inclusion. For public libraries in Samoa, some of the services that we provide are mainly for educational resources, which is for reading programs. We have the American Corner Space and some of the very popular titles and books provided for this area that is free to all students and library users. We have the Pacific Room. We have the largest collection of Pacific and Samoan books in which everyone can access. Our reference section, which provide free access to most materials, but we need an ID card to borrow this collection. We have our library activities, the free reading session and free reading tutorials, English tutorials for children, not only in the primary level, but in high school as well as academic students. We also try our best to involve staff and be public figures for students when they come to the library, where they have book characters during reading sessions and all the other stuff that they do to help the students when they come in for programming. Our community outreach to school libraries, as mentioned by Avalongo in his presentation, our school libraries, there is more than 60 school libraries with school library assistants. And some of the schools that do not have school library assistant, we offer our help and assistance through their reading programs, book sorting, their cataloging, and their literacy programs. And this is one of our biggest work today, is helping out with our school libraries as they are starting to increase in number, where most schools now have libraries but without school library assistants. Some of the challenges that we have in our services in the public library includes limited budget to operate, the lack of an integrated library management system with limited knowledge we do have, and sometimes a lack of support from the ICT section. We have low salaries for library personnel and the threats of natural disasters. The impacts of public libraries to the community defines our role in supporting the SDGs. We do have challenges with our work that we feel needs to be addressed. To conclude, libraries plays an integral part to the community and supports all SDGs. Before leaving and concluding an event, we often say, "Whaatatele lava." And to conclude this presentation, thank you so much to Lianza for allowing us to come to Auckland for this conference. We thank Winston for supporting us with our presentation and everything. And we thank everyone present here today for my presentation. Thank you so much.
Malo lava, you know how this goes, you don't go away too fast. We've got a few minutes left. I do have a question, and it's something that has resonated between your presentation and Tongi's earlier presentation, that this is really Samoa more Samoa. And that some of the tensions in the development world is that it can be the North servicing the South kind of dynamic. I know that when I worked and lived with rainforest communities in Borneo, it was a tension I had. What am I doing here? I'm not from here. I know eventually I'm going to leave. But I know that from the examples that you and Tongi have given is that this is Samoa doing it for Samoa. What is it about? Now, you are aware of how things happen in Aotearoa, what happens in Fiji, what happens in other parts of the region. What is the Samoan difference here in the way that you are working through libraries? What makes it Samoan?
Thank you for the question. I believe the way we do it, our work in Samoa, we work collaboratively with Avalongo, and we try our best to cater for the needs locally, and we also look outside for assistance for our work, and our main focus is that we can look at ways from outside to have it in our work locally, so that we can sing the same song for libraries, especially for libraries. I hope I have.
Yes, you're doing a great job, Manuia. Any questions from the floor before we move to conclusions?
I'd just love to know what you've found. So you listed quite a few different ways that you run activities to engage with children, for example, book days and so on. What have you found to be the most successful? Like if you had to pick one or two of the activities that you run through the library to bring in the community, what would be the highlights?
I think the main highlights of our programming is our reading programs for the children, which is the grassroots. We're trying to improve the literacy. And the other popular programming that we have found that it attracts more students is our theme programs, where we celebrated, because some children, they do not know the Earth Day, why we celebrate Earth Day, why we put the emphasis on health, and all that. So this is our way of doing the program so that more will come in. And it's a popular spot for children coming to our programs. Thank you.
Yes, a question from our friend.
Does it work? Oh, yeah, it does. Okay. Seems to me that in Samoa and in other countries of the Pacific, actually, there are some SDGs which you could say have been achieved, tick. One of those is the development of strong institutions. Which goal was that, Richie? Can you remind me? Was it 16 or? Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, the SDG, which I can't remember, which is development of strong institutions. We have seen peaceful transfers of power between parties and governments in Samoa and other countries in the Pacific. So that's a big tick. That's a win. So, it's nice to be able to say, honestly, that in a series of presentations about how we are working towards the SDGs, that's one where we've already overachieved, you might say. But another point, that's not a question, that was a comment, but my question is to both of our speakers from Apia. Have you been in touch with the UNESCO office in Apia and maybe other UN offices? Because I'm curious to know whether those international government agencies have provided support, assistance, advice to, and maybe budgets to your National Commission for UNESCO to help with some of your programs. Because working with external partners is one of the things that are included in the goals. So, have you been able to work with them? Thank you.
I'll answer from my side of work. We have been collaborating with UNESCO, since one of our requests is having one of our newspaper and the other Pacific books to be digitized so that we can have a digital library. So we already have collaborations, and we are looking at having someone from the Chaika to come over so that we can work for 2 years. Not only we learn from them, but also we will have our digital collection, especially with the newspapers and some old Samoan books that we still have in the collection, but starting to fade. So that's our priority now with UNESCO. So hopefully by next year we will be able to work with the JICA expatriate who will be working with us. But I give it over to Governor.
The second phase of our Knowledge Society initiative is the development of our lifelong learning repository, and it involves the Ministry of Education and the National University of Samoa. And that's where the UNESCO consultants come in. But we're still awaiting some of them to play a more proactive role. And some of these consultants we have yet to meet, and we're still trying to collaborate how we go forward in this development and of our libraries. But in the past, we've been able to acquire, publications from UNESCO. I would go out of my way to stop at their libraries and headquarters to get the physical collections from them. And they are coming on board now in terms of helping out with the online, the support that they're giving the government in terms of the UN project. We now have access to their digital libraries. So UNESCO is pretty strong on advocating for education, and they're also helping in other areas with our Ministry of Education. So there's continuity and discontinuity of projects from the past, whereby they, having people there that were very pro-Pacific and were active, and they could have done a lot more. But then the support of the Koha database, for instance, went well, and then they suddenly just discontinued that without any funding after, say, 3 or 4 years. So that's the kind of haphazard development that we've had with this UN agency. It depends on the personalities of the coordinators the people, the managers that come from overseas, if they're not there, if they're not passionate about the development of libraries, then if not sustainable, then they're just wasting their time and become tourists in the country for over a few years. But we need consultants that are passionate about education and library development and literacy, because that's what they're highly paid for, to come out and develop Pacifica institutions. Well, that's what I think and have experienced, so might as well be honest and say they could have done better. Thank you.
Okay, when you come back to DevNet for the next conference, that's what you're going to talk about. I think that's the real meat of it, eh? So we can talk about policies, strategies, and development frameworks. But when the rubber hits the road, it's this relationship stuff that we need to cut through. You know what Richie was talking about, when mergers happen and mindsets are different from the intention. How do we find a way forward? How do we actually get to the outcome that we're looking for, past the personalities and the obstructions? Hey, we've gone over time, but tomorrow, as my mum would say, as I'm trying to eat everything in the house, tomorrow is another day. So tomorrow is another day. Please reach out to our speakers if you want to have more talanoa, more kōrero with them. I'm going to finish in a similar way that I started, with a short chant. I can't tell you when the first public library was built in Rarotonga, but I can tell you that houses of learning is not a new concept to us, and that we have temporarily held a house of learning here for an hour and a little bit. And when those houses of learning were disbanded so that knowledge would go into the communities, it was disbanded under this chant that says, "Arise and awaken, so that you may go out and do and face all the things that you need to face." So it's not enough that we sit in rooms like this and talk and theorize. There is action to be done when we leave. And so the chant calls us to that action, and the chant goes like this. Ma tike tike marangara. Karakoe koe tapo, keno tapo, ara tapo, tapo e tu e. Hey ara, kia ora, and have a good evening, everyone.